Hello, Divas, and welcome back to my channel. We are deep into Black History Month, and to that end, I wanted to take some time today to discuss some of my favorite Black authors and favorite titles by those authors. Okay, let's just dive right in and get started, okay? The first one I wanted to talk about is James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. I try to read this every June. It is not long, but it is so dense. There's so much that happens. It's so difficult to get through, but so beautiful. It is this epic depiction of, but also so quiet. It's fascinating, of gay love and the complexities that come along with that, and the unrequited love, and the like learning to love oneself. And it's just so acutely captured in a way that like only Baldwin can. There's a lot to digest or dissect there, really, in terms of like different choices that he made about different characters and their race, and that's a different conversation, I think, for a different video. But in honoring James Baldwin and his incredible work, Giovanni's Room is absolutely one worth consuming yourself in. It's such a special piece of literature. Now for something completely different, but equally as fabulous, is Bassey Ikpi's I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying. It is a collection of essays about mental illness. And I read this with a book club, I believe in 2020. So I think we were deep in the pandemic and we were all on Zoom. And the woman who runs our book club is named Siobhan Floyd, and I am a huge fan of hers. And she was able to contact Ikpi and get her to come and speak to us. And it was so magical. Since then, we've connected very lightly over on TikTok, and she is incredible. Absolutely go find her on TikTok. I think she's such a unique voice. This work is so powerful, but it's so dense. Not dense. It's so heavy in the best possible way. It's heavy in a vulnerable way. Does that make sense? Like it feels so intimate in how raw and honest she is through these like telling of these stories and these events, and I could not recommend it higher. It's just so beautifully done, and it's so consumable in like, even in the way that it's like broken up, right? Like it's just broken up into ways that are so easy to digest with a subject matter that is like so intense. Absolutely pick up Bassey Ikpi's I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying. Now we have, listen, this is more about how much respect I have for this author than this like particular book, though I think that this like book is really magical. So it's called Misfits by Michaela Cole. And really this is just kind of like a love letter to Michaela Cole. I think that you should find all of the television content that you can that she has written and consume it immediately, if not sooner. So this was from a lecture that she gave at the Edinburgh International Television Festival. It's really lovely. I think it's really impactful. You know, I have like little things tagged throughout it that I need to go back and revisit. And I think it's worth a read, but I also think that all of her television, like, immediately consume. What, Chewing Gum and I May Destroy You. I May Destroy You did destroy me. Yeah, wild. But yes, all things Michaela Cole. This one too. I mean, it's very impactful and very powerful. I think it's very, very easy read. I think it's like basically a one sitting kind of situation. And actually, I wonder if they recorded her filming the speech. I don't know. That would be something that would be interesting to see. But yeah, Personal Manifesto is what the subtitle is, and it really just goes into a lot of like her inspiration and how she felt like a misfit, and it's very inspirational. But again, her television content, go go go. And this next one is really about the author, but like I loved this work so much. It was Percival Everett, and this is James, but I also loved his book, The Trees. I might even say that I liked The Trees more than James. I know, I know. But when you read The Trees, then you can get back to me and then we can talk about it, okay? James is brilliant, obviously got all of the accolades. I think it was on all the short lists, won the National Book Award. Um, and James, as we've talked about on this channel multiple times, is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn through the perspective of Jim, the enslaved person. Does a great job. I do think that there are like certain elements of it that like worked a little bit better in concept than execution, but I'm just being like, you know, in an effort to keep an interesting conversation going around art, right? I also think that the ending, I wanted a different kind of build. I think it stayed really true to the original until it didn't. And I wish there had been a little bit different kind of like massaging into this like the like Percival Everett ending, which I think was really cool and really powerful. But the trees basically looks at lynching in America and turns it on its head. And which I guess you could argue is what he's doing with Huckleberry Finn, turning it on its head, right? It's like one of the things he's most masterful at. And it is incredible. It really takes the lens and puts it very firmly on white people and what it means to be white in America and the roles and responsibilities. And it does it through this lens of a kind of like a mystery. It's really intense because obviously like lynching is really the subject matter, and the way he turns that on its head, which and like includes Emmett Till and I it's really fascinating, and it's just a really powerful story. So this is just the Percival Everett love hour, but obviously I think everyone should read James, and I think that the trees is really, I think, almost even better. Oh, and his wife wrote colored television, which listen, I really enjoyed. I think colored television is absolutely worth a read. Dancy Senna, yeah, his wife, she's great. That's just a little plug. Yeah. Okay, the next one up is a collection of stories. They're Nigerian. It's the collection is called Ghost Roots, and it's by Pemi Aguda. This collection was, I believe, shortlisted for the National Book Award. I'm still thinking about them. Like that to me is what a good story collection does. Certain ones of them stick with you. And I remember I was making a video about this and I was thinking of one story in particular. And I was like, well, because it's so top of mind, it had to have been like towards the end. The story is like towards the beginning. That's what's wild to me. Like, yeah, middle, beginning. And like that is the story that stuck with me so much. Like that says a lot about the writing. I think those Nigerians can write. Those Nigeria, like immediately if they say the author's from Nigeria, I'm like, yeah, let's write. Let's read it. Let's read it and like see where they take us and see what happens, because I've rarely been let down. Yeah, I would. So again, this is something that's like totally different. It's a story collection. The stories are a lot about motherhood and family and the self. I think it's really powerful, and I think that yeah, again, like it depends on what you're into, right? I think that like Giovanni's Room is like a shorter novel to like sink your teeth into. Bassey Ikpi's essays. So these are like things that happened to her through this like a very raw emotional lens. Then you've got the Michaela Cole, which is just like a speech that she gave, and then you can go watch all her television. So also her television writing. Then you've got Percival Everett, who is this like incredible surrealist, author who's gonna like take Black history and like turn it on its head and like really force America to look at itself. And then you've got Ghost Roots, which is stories, and they're like short, consumable, but deep and heavy. So all of those things, I think, with this first group of authors, like will give you something different. And you can find something that you love in all of those. I promise. It does not matter what type of reader you are, unless you're into nonfiction. And we got more of that coming up in a second. But next, I wanted to talk about Jason Mott and his Hell of a Book, which won the National Book Award in 2021. And the shortlist that year, wildly good. Even two of the long list titles could have won the prize. Like, this was a year for the National Book Award. I should do a whole video on that, actually. Hell of a Book is a wild and crazy story. It actually feels very akin to The Trees, in my opinion, in terms of like taking style and just kind of like futzing with it and like creating this surrealist reality that like pokes a fine tooth like focus on the atrocities and injustices in America. This it's like a dual narrative, and you're following an unnamed author on their book tour, and then there's also a story of a boy, and the worlds meld, and like it really begs the question, like, what is reality and what's not. And this, throughout this entire work, the author is, or the protagonist, the unnamed protagonist, is like forced to come to terms with parts of their life and choices that they're making, and really look at themselves while also moving through this very difficult time in history. It was really mirroring a lot of what was happening at the time, very publicly, I would argue, because it's probably been happening forever and ever, and is unfortunately probably going to continue to happen for a bit. But of what was happening in America, particularly around 2020 and around police brutality and. So yeah, it's a difficult book, but it almost defies genre. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Jason Mott, hell of a book. You gotta be down to clown. You gotta be down to clown, because he really flips everything on its head. And it's like, wait, is this person that he's talking to real? Are they with him in the car? Are they not? How does that work? You gotta be down. Okay. This next author, goddess, national treasure. I cannot speak highly enough, and it's impossible for me to have more respect for this woman than I do. And that is Isabel Wilkerson, particularly her two titles, Caste and The Warmth of Other Suns. Correctly, The Warmth of Other Suns, I think, was listed as the number 2 title in the New York Times list of like the top 100 books of the 21st century. That's saying something. Particularly too, if we want to get real down and dirty with it, that's also wild, because I actually even enjoyed Caste more. How about that? Two very different books, but and I read Caste first, to be fair, so it could have just been that I was like, this is when I fell in love with her. If that makes any sense, I don't know, maybe. But they're both incredible. Caste really delves into the caste system that we have here in America, and it rips it apart, and it contextualizes it from like a worldview and a historical view. It also puts it into like sharp focus as it like looks at the atrocities of other countries and how they really looked to the United States to build the foundation of their horrific crimes against humanity. And what's fascinating is that certain individuals or certain groups looked to the US, and it's documented as saying that they felt that the US practices were too extreme, which is wild. And I think that this book just does an incredible job of really exploring that and putting it into plain language in a way that is shocking and necessary. She takes the amount of research that goes into these books is like beyond. It's like next level. This is why she was put on this planet. I could literally talk about this woman for hours. The Warmth of Other Suns specifically discusses or chronicles the Great Migration, and she follows 3 families through their migration to, I believe, Chicago, New York, and then California. It's fascinating. It's done so well. It's told like a story, so it feels almost, it feels like narrative nonfiction at times, but it's so well researched. It's just so magical. And you're getting these firsthand accounts of a part of history that I would argue that we have not fully discussed. And we've not looked at how this has truly shaped our country. Like without this great migration, it, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think that it does such an incredible job. And this is the opus. I mean, this is the work of her lifetime. Both of them. Yeah, Isabel Wilkerson. So now we've really given you all of it, right? We've given you every kind of book you could be into. We've talked about. We got a couple more, but still. So I'm just throwing it out. Like one of these, you can pick one of these this month to read if you haven't. Okay. Next up is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. You guys. Oh, this one I think was also shortlisted for the National Book Award the same year that Hell of a Book was. I'm telling that was a year, ladies and gentlemen, a year for fiction. This tells the story of two men who fall in love who are living as enslaved men. And it is just a beautiful queer tale. Um, yeah, I do think that some of the like foreshadowing was a little heavy-handed. I don't think we needed all of that. But aside from that, it's just so well done. It's gorgeous. And like, when do you get a gay story about enslaved people? Like, come on. It's just so beautiful and like opens up these complexities that you might not have necessarily thought about. And like, oh, just obsessed. Oh, and now we've got Homegoing by Yagiasi. Listen, I heard that her second title was not as well received. I'm not here to speak on that, but Homegoing, I had such a moving experience reading this. I need to go back and read it again because it's one of those titles that like almost instead of the like plot points I took away from it, I took away the feeling that I had. I still remember there was one time I was down in the United States of Texas visiting family, and I was talking to the girl at Starbucks about it, and I was like, you need to read this book. And then I just sat back by myself. I'm like, who are you coming in and getting coffee and telling this barista that she needs to go buy this book? So you know what I did? I literally immediately drove myself to Barnes and Noble and I picked up the book and I brought it back to her. Listen, it was the suburbs in the United States of Texas. That was the only bookstore I could get to. Um, so yeah, and then I dropped it off and then went home because like people need to read this book. It was about two half sisters who are born in Ghana, and one of them is sold into slavery and comes to the United States to live as an enslaved person, and the other stays. And the way their stories intertwine and the way their lives grow in these different ways, it's fascinating. It's beautifully crafted. I just love it so much. And last but certainly not least is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This story just ripped my heart out. I've not seen the movie yet, and I'm not hearing enough press about it. Like, is it not good? Because the book's incredible. And actually, if the movie's not good, read the book. Because I distinctly remember staying up until probably 4 a.m, just devouring this because I could not put it down. There was not a world where I was going to go to bed before I had finished this book. It is a gut-wrenching story about this reform school in Florida and all of the atrocities that took place there. Colson Whitehead crafted the story beautifully. Later this month, I'm reading The Underground Railroad, which I cannot wait for. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we have some Pulitzer Prize winning work here. Yes, some incredible fiction that is going to like span large periods of time and like lost sisters and different span continents, right? Then we have gay love that is happening between two enslaved people. Then y'all, we've got some of the best nonfiction that's ever been written. Fight me. Actually, don't fight yourself because it's just true with both of these titles. Then we've got surrealism coming out the wazoo in Hell of a Book, which really takes a sharp look at the America through this like critical lens, and it's also funny. Like, hello. Then Ghost Roots, where we have this incredible Nigerian author, and there's all stories. They're like short, digestible, heavy, but complex, beautiful stories. Then we've got Percival Everett with either James, the retelling of Huckleberry Finn, or The Trees, which is also incredible. Again, I think maybe even better, but nonfiction, or I mean fiction, but like this, The Trees is almost even like surrealist and similar to Hell of a Book, a little funny. I actually feel like The Trees and Hell of a Book are a little bit akin to each other, slightly in terms of style. So if you're into one, I think you'll be into the other. Then we've got this short, digestible, lovely like speech, right? That's about empowerment and loving yourself and like, persevering against all odds. Also, television writer, go watch your television shows. Then you've got these essays by Bassey Ikpi, which are just heartbreaking and just incredibly poignant and so raw and vulnerable and just such a tour de force. And then you've got just this short, consumable work of just literary art by a legend about gay coming of age. Like, what is set in France? What more could you? Come on, come on. Pick up one of these. There, if you've read them all, cheers. Like, let's go get coffee because we would be best friends. But if you haven't, trust me, if you've liked one of these, I have a gut feeling you'll like all of them. I just pick up one of them. Pick up one of them this Black History Month and decide for yourself, right? Learn something new, open your eyes to something. Like that's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we connect and persevere through these times. For this week, these are all books that I think are worth your time. None of these should be left on the shelf. What are some of your favorites? Let me know down in the comments and we will talk more about them. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I cannot wait until next time where we get to talk more about books. See you soon.